There's a moment near the end of Clair Obscur Expedition 33 where a little boy sits alone at a canvas, painting. He can't stop, he doesn't want to be there, no one is watching, no one is thanking him. The world above him, the city, the people, the gesturals, the grief of an entire family, runs on the fuel of his exhaustion. And he just keeps painting. No one ever asked him if he wanted to. So the question the game puts in front of you is this: do you free him, or do you keep him painting because you can't let go? I'm going to tell you why I freed him, and I'm going to tell you why I think, if you sit with this long enough, you'll understand why it was the only honest choice. Alright, so ladies and gentlemen, I just finished Clair Obscur Expedition 33 a good few weeks ago. And I've been sitting on this video ever since, not because I didn't know what I wanted to say, but because I needed to understand why I felt the way I felt before I could say it properly. Here's the thing. Somewhere around Act 2, and if you guys saw my streams, you can notice that when the ending of Act 2 came along, something shifted in me, not in a good way, at least not at first, because I felt betrayed, not by the game. The game is a masterpiece. I said that in my review, and I meant every word of it, but betrayed by the premise, because Act 1 sold me something. It sold me this world's Lumière, the expedition, Gustave, Lune, Shell, the gesturals. It sold me this world as something real and worth fighting for. It made me invest everything. And then Act 2 looked at me dead in the eyes and said, actually, none of this is what you think it is. And I had to sit with it, I had to sit with that. The shift from playing as someone trying to save a world to suddenly realizing you've been inside a painting the whole time. Inside the family's grief, inside someone else's inability to let go. It felt like the rug getting pulled, It genuinely felt like the game was lying to me. Again, the game is a masterpiece, don't get me wrong. And then I realized, slowly over the past few weeks, that's the point. I realized that that's the point. This feeling of betrayal and disorientation, the moment where you're not sure anymore what was real and what was painted, that's what Maël was feeling. That's what the whole Dessendre family has been living inside. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. I have to double check. The game didn't lie to you. It made you experience the life from inside. So when you get to the ending, when someone asks you to choose, you understand in your gut what's actually at stake. And that's why I chose Verso's ending. Now, let me be upfront about something. When I made that choice, I assumed I was in the majority. It felt like the obvious call, It felt like the game was guiding me to that ending. So I went online, I spoke with also a couple of friends of mine, even co-workers that also play the game, expecting to find people or a community that largely agreed with me. Maybe with some healthy debate on the edges, and I found the opposite. Like a huge portion of people chose Maël's ending. And look, I have absolutely no issue with the choice itself. Both endings are valid. Both endings cost something. This game doesn't have a wrong ending, a wrong answer in the sense that it has a stupid one. But some of the reasoning people gave for choosing Maël's ending, that's what I struggled with. That was my biggest grip, Because people were saying things like, the painted people are just as real as the people outside the canvas. Destroying them is genocide. You're killing millions of lives to fix one family's therapy. Another one was, Maël is disabled in the real world. She has no voice. Her face is all messed up. She's blind from one eye. She deserves to live in a world where she has her body back. Who are we to take that from her, you know? And the other one, which this one I have to disagree with, but they were talking about Verso. They were saying that Verso is a manipulative liar who let Gustav die for his own agenda, you know? That his ending rewards him for being selfish. Why should we side with the guy who betrayed us? I hear all of that. I genuinely do. Those arguments are even right, partially. But they are also missing something. Something I think is at the very core of what this game is trying to say. And that's what this entire video is about. Let me show you why. Look, I love this game. I love this game. I'm very happy that the game got Game of the Year. I'm very happy. But let me explain to you why I chose Versus ending. Look, I know what you're thinking. Some of you came into this game and felt those people in Lumière were real. You spent countless of hours with Lune, Ciel, Gustav, Verso, Monaco, Esquier. You watch them grieve. You watch them fall in love, flirt with each other even. You watch them fight for a world they believed in, not knowing the gods above them were tearing it apart with their bare hands. And then you got at the end of the game, and someone asks you to burn it all down. And you said no. I get it. I understand that. The best argument against Versus ending isn't Mael deserves to be happy. That's an emotional argument. It's understandable, but it's not the best one. The best argument is this. Those people were real. Lune and Shell, they are not puppets. They are not a simulation. Gustav, whatever he was made of, loved people, was loved back, and died for something that mattered to him. The journals of 67 or 68 expeditions you find scattered across the continent aren't just flavor texts. They're lives. They are people born into a world they didn't choose, fighting a war they didn't start, dying by a number on a wall that counted down their fate with the cold indifference of mathematics. And the Dessendre family, these broken, grieving gods, if you want to call them, use them as collateral in their private war. That's the real horror of this game. It's not the Gommage, it's not the Nevrons, not even the paintress standing at the monolith year after year. No, the real horror of this game is the painters. Ordinary people with extraordinary power and absolutely no idea what to do with either. And you're telling me that Versus ending, erasing all of them, every last one of them, is the right call? I understand the anger. I sat with it for a long time. But before I start dismantling this argument, I want to mention something about a man who had a lot to say about time and loss. Seneca. He's a Roman Stoic philosopher. He was someone that wrote the most devastating letters about grief ever committed to paper. He said this: we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Everything is borrowed, only time is truly ours. The people of Lumière were living on borrowed time for the moment Aline entered that canvas. Not because they weren't real, not because their pain didn't count, but because the world they inhabited was built on a foundation that was never meant to hold. A dead boy's canvas, a grieving mother's delusion, a soul fragment that wanted nothing more than to rest. Like I said, their time, their pain, their love, everything, it was real. But the world sustained by someone else's unwilling labor against his will forever, that's a sentence. I'm sorry, that's not a gift. Seneca would have recognized it immediately. The Dessendre's family don't just suffer more in imagination than in reality. They have replaced reality with imagination entirely. And they are dragging everyone they love, painted and real alike, down with them. And here's where in my opinion, this is just an opinion. This is just my I'm just trying to justify myself why I chose the ending that I chose. Here's where the argument against Verso fractures, no pun intended. The canvas was already dead. Not metaphorically, not literally. The moment Renoir unleashed the final gommage, it was over. Luna and Shell, they only survived because Maëlle grabbed their chroma in time. She knew them, she could hold their shape in her mind clearly enough to catch them before they dissolved. Everyone else was gone. The ordinary faces of Lumière, the expeditioner whose journals you found throughout the game, gone. So when Maëlle repopulates the world at the end of her ending, understand what she's actually doing. Shell said it herself in one of the camp conversations. She says that death isn't actually death anymore. She said it like it was a revelation, like suddenly everything she had grieved, her child, her husband, everything, the years she spent waiting to die, might not be permanent at all. But listen to what that actually means. The people walking around in Lumière, in Maëlle's ending, are not the people you knew. Their chroma dissipated. So their specific, irreplaceable pattern of consciousness, whatever made Shell and not just a perfect reconstruction of her, is gone. What Maëlle is painting is a reproduction from memory, a copy, which is exactly what Aline did when she first built this world. And what did we learn about what Aline built? She painted her son back from the dead and got a man who wanted to die. She painted her daughter with her real-world scars because she blamed her for surviving. She painted a husband, Renoir, so loyal that he became a monster. So she didn't really build a world. She built a museum, a mausoleum, and put people in it to make it feel warm. Now, Maëlle's ending is the same architecture. Different grief, okay, but it's the same prison. The people who defend it, they say, but they're alive. They're there on the screen, smiling, living. And look, you guys are right, but those aren't the people we met. And the one person we know is genuinely, consciously experiencing that world, the ones whose face we can read, is sitting at the piano he never wanted to play, with eyes that have already given up. Now let's talk about the family, because if you don't talk about the Dessendre family, this story won't work unless you understand what kind of people they are. They're not villains, like the game wants to convince you of in the beginning, but they are not heroes either. They are something far more difficult. People who love badly. Aline is a grieving mother who painted her dead son back into existence. Painted her daughter with her real-world scars because she blamed her for surviving. And then slowly killed herself, staying in a world that wasn't real. Because the real world had already taken the only thing she wanted. When she finally appears before you, the paintress herself, she tries to kill you. Fails, then immediately starts healing you. The mask slips. Underneath the mask, underneath the monster is a woman lying on the floor, coughing paint, spending the last of herself trying to protect the peace of her son she built. That's not evil, that's someone who broke. Renoir is a fractured man, no pun intended. Look at his creations. Every neuron is cracked. Every axon is barely holding together. You have that the big axon, the I don't know her, I forgot the name now, but it's a dancing axon. You know, she's dancing in a crumbling temple, beautiful and oblivious to the destruction she causes behind her. The axon representing Alicia is strapped high in a tower. He wants her to fly and doesn't understand why building her in a gilded cage isn't the same thing. He spent 67 years trying to do the right thing in all the wrong ways. Because he knows what losing yourself to a canvas does. He lived it. Aline pulled him out, and now she's the one drowning. Claire is grief compressed into motion, channeled so completely into revenge against the writers that she can't afford to feel anything else. She's brutal to Alicia, dismissive, cold, but she sent Verso to watch over her. She built the endless tower for a sister she couldn't face. Claire doesn't stop caring. She just can't afford to start. And then there's Verso, painted Verso, he who guards truth with lies. He manipulated everyone around him. He let Gustav die, and I will come back to this because it's the hinge. It's the hinge everything turns on. He threw a letter into the ocean. He's not a clean hero. But here's what it is, what he is underneath all of it. A man who has watched everyone he loved die. Over and over and over again. For 100 years, in a world he couldn't leave, painted with his mother's ideal version of himself. Brave and sacrificial, basically the perfect grieving son. Knowing all along he wasn't that person. His real self-love was music, not painting, music. The one canvas he ever made as a child was the world you're standing in. And even inside of it, even as a ghost of himself, he hid his truth where no one was looking, in the soundtrack. The music was always his. The truth was always there. He just was never allowed to stop painting. And there is a little detail that I cannot let go of. A life spent dreaming. Une vie à rêver. I think, I'm sorry, my French is not the best, but Painted Alicia wrote a letter to Verso before the events of Act 2 closed. So she found a third path, a way forward that didn't require anyone to die, didn't require the canvas to burn, didn't require Maëlle to lie to her father in front of everyone who loved her. Verso read it. He threw it into the ocean. And if you're angry about that, good, you should be. He made the choice for all of them. He decided, alone in the dark, that the dream was impossible. That there was no third ending. That the only way forward was through fire, and everyone else would have to live with that. The game's original soundtrack have 3 songs named after the endings. One, Une vie à t'aimer, I'm sorry guys, but, which is a life to love. Then the second one is Une vie à peindre, a life to paint. And then you have the one that I just mentioned, Une vie à rêver, a life to dream. Any French people that are watching the video, please, I'm sorry for butchering your language, don't come after me. The third song exists. The third ending doesn't, because Verso threw it away. But here's the detail that matters more than the letter. He let Gustav die. Not by accident, not by inaction of born of cowardice. He admitted it to Mael's face in one of the quietest and most devastating scenes in the game. He could have stopped it. He chose not to, because Gustav would have convinced Mael to leave. Because Gustav was the only person in that world who loved her without agenda. Not Verso, who needed her for his plan, not Renoir, who needed her out, not Aline, who resented her existence, just Gustav. The man who raised her, who taught her what it meant to keep going when everyone around you was falling. When one falls, we continue. Verso let the one person fall who was the reason Mael wanted to continue. This is not a small thing. This is calculated. It's a deliberate act by a man who had already decided how the story ended and was willing to use Mael's grief as a tool to get there. And here is where I have to stop talking about Mael and start talking about myself. Because I know what it feels like to have that support disappear, that scaffolding disappear. As I said in my previous videos, I lost my father when I was 14 years old. 14 years old, you know, at an age where you haven't finished being built yet. An age where you're still figuring out who you are, and suddenly the person who was supposed to help you figure that out is just gone. And the world keeps moving, the world keeps spinning. Everyone around you expects you to keep moving with it. And you do, because what else do you do? But something inside you is always looking for the frame to step back into. Always looking for the version of the world where he's still there. And more recently, I've lost my best friend. Someone who was there in a different way. A chosen family way. The kind of person who knew you so completely that their absence creates a shape in the room you can feel even years later. I will feel it for the rest of my life. I know what it means to want to stay inside the painting. If I had Mael's age, 15, 16, you know, raw with survivor's guilt, disabled, voiceless, with a family that barely acknowledged my grief, and someone handed me this God power, this power to paint the world back to the way it was, I would probably have done exactly what she did. I think I know that's what I was going to do, without hesitation. I would have painted every single one of them back, and I would have stayed inside that canvas until it killed me. And I would have called it love. But listen, I am 30 years old now, and I've carried those losses long enough to know something Mael doesn't know yet. The painted version is never the same as the real one. You can reconstruct everything. The face, the voice, the gestures, the appearance, the body language, everything. You can reconstruct everything, but you cannot paint back the specific weight of a person who no longer exists. The surprise of them, the part of them you didn't know yet. The argument you were going to have next Tuesday, the thing they would have said about who you've become. What you can paint is a memorial. And memorials are beautiful, don't get me wrong, but they are not the same thing as living. That's what Mael builds. A memorial she moves into and calls a life. And I understand it. God, I fucking understand it. And I still think it's the wrong choice. Mael found the canvas. But understanding something and endorsing it are not the same thing. Regarding Mael's ending, what actually is and why it's immoral, and this is the part I need you to sit with, not to feel, but to think. Simone de Beauvoir, the wife of Jean-Paul Sartre, she wrote about what she called bad faith. The act of surrendering your freedom by pretending you have no choice. Of telling yourself the situation demands a specific response, when really you're just afraid of the responsibility that comes with choosing freely. Maël's ending is bad faith made into a world. She tells Renoir she'll come back. She looks him in the eyes, a man who spent 67 years fighting for his family, who finally cracked open and trusted her, and she lies. Not because she had no choice, because choosing freely meant accepting a grief she wasn't ready for. That's Beauvoir's bad faith. That's what it looks like in practice. But it goes further than philosophy. What Maël's ending does to specific people inside it, let's talk about it. Because Verso, painted Verso, the person in the world that has the most consciousness, the most history, and the most genuine self, begs her to unpaint him. He says clearly, with no ambiguity, I don't want this life. He has said variations of this for 100 years. He has watched everyone he loved died. He has been forced into immortality by a mother who couldn't let go. And now, at the very moment he has a chance at rest, the sister he died for makes the exact same choice his mother made. She paints him back. She makes him mortal, yes, but she makes him sit down at that piano. And if you look at his face in Maël's ending, if you really look at it, you don't see relief. You don't see peace. You see a man performing contentment for an audience of one, knowing the audience will never leave. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not mercy. That's a different kind of imprisonment with prettier furniture. Now extend that logic outward. The people Maël repaints, the ones she didn't know personally, you know, the ordinary citizens of Lumière, look at them in the ending cutscene. Look at the ones in the background of the concert hall. Faces in shadow, interchangeable silhouettes. Because she doesn't know them. She can't know them. She's painting approximations of people who no longer exist, filling a world with shapes that look like the ones she loved but aren't. She made herself a god over a cemetery and called it life. Camus wrote that the only serious philosophical question is whether life is worth living. His answer, arrived at through the full weight of absurdism, of staring into the void and refusing to blink, was yes. But not through escape, not through illusion, through revolt, rebellion, through looking at the absurdity of existence, the certainty of loss, the indifference of the universe, and choosing to live anyway in full consciousness of all of it. Maël's ending is the opposite of revolt. It's surrendered. It's surrender dressed as victory. It's choosing the simulation over the wound because the wound is real and the simulation is manageable. And the price of that choice is paid by someone who already paid everything once. Verso paid with his life to give his sister a chance to live. In her ending, she uses that payment to build a world where she never has to face what his death cost her. That's consumption. That's not love. Verso's ending is not a happy ending. Let me be clear about that. I'm not here to sell you comfort. I'm here to tell you the truth. The canvas burns. Lune sits in the end, she sits there with betrayal written on her face, not even looking at him, just done. Fury that has nowhere else to go. Monoko, and Esquire, they disappear holding each other. And that image will live in my mind forever, believe me. The last moments of a world we loved, going dark. And Alicia, she stands in front of a grave, holding a stuffed Eskia like a child who never got to be a child. The family doesn't suddenly heal. Aline clings to Renoir because she has nothing else left. Claire walks away because, of course she does. She was always going to. Alicia is alone with the doll and a grave and a real world that never wanted her. That's the ending. That's what I chose. And I chose it anyway. Seneca also wrote, through hardship to the stars. Not around it, not under it, through. There is no version of healing that bypasses the wound. There is no version of healing that bypasses suffering. There is no grief you can paint over that doesn't eventually bleed through. Every member of that family who tried to shortcut that process made it worse. For themselves, for each other, for the world they kept breaking, trying to fix it. Verso's ending doesn't fix it either, but it stops from breaking. It removes the open wounds from the center of the family. It lets the boy stop painting. It forces her, yes, without her consent, which is Verso's sin, and I won't pretend otherwise, out into a world where the grief is waiting, but also where the healing can start. The alternative is Mael's ending, where healing is permanently deferred, where a real person's explicit wish to die is ignored, and where the grief is painted over and called a masterpiece. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but this is the reason why I chose Verso's ending. The thing that this game is trying to say is that, look, Clair Obscur is about grief. But more precisely, it's about what grief does when you refuse to let it move through you. Aline refused. She built a world. Renoir refused in the opposite direction. He tried to destroy the world to force everyone else to stop refusing. Maëlle refused. She repainted the world. Claire refuses her own way. She basically runs towards a war instead of towards herself. Only Verso, manipulative, lying, hypocritical, complicated Verso, looked at the situation and said, this has to end. Not because the people of Lumière didn't matter, not because Maëlle's pain wasn't real, but because the canvas was a wound being kept open by everyone who loved it too much to let it close. Because the boy painting at its center was suffering in a way that no one had stopped to ask about. Everyone in that family was going to keep destroying each other until someone made the choice no one else was willing to make. He made it. When one falls, we continue. Verso fell again. For the same reason the real Verso fell the first time. To give his sister a chance to live. Is it selfish? Yes. It's selfish. He wanted to stop existing, and he used every tool he had to get there. Is it manipulative? Yes. He let someone die and threw a letter into the ocean and lied for 100 years. Is it the right call? Yes. Not because it's clean, not because it costs nothing, but because the alternative traps everyone in the wound forever. Because bad faith is not love, even when it looks like it. Freedom, real freedom, requires accepting the weight of your own choices. Maëlle choosing the canvas is not freedom, it's abdication. Verso destroying it is not murder, it's the hardest kind of mercy. I said at the beginning of this video that there's a boy sitting alone at the canvas, painting. He doesn't stop. He doesn't want to be there. Camus said we must imagine Sisyphus happy. The man condemned to roll a boulder up a hill forever, watching it fall, climbing down to do it again. He said the struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. But Camus never said Sisyphus had to stay on that hill. He never said the boulder was worth more than the man. The boy at the canvas deserved to put down the brush. He deserved to walk out into whatever comes after. The unknown, the rest that 100 years of unwilling labor had earned him. I gave him that. I freed him. Not because I didn't love the world he was painting, not because Luna's face in that last scene didn't break something in me. I freed him because of my father, because of my best friend, because of every version of myself that wanted to stay inside the frame where the people I loved were still there. At 14 years old, I would have chosen Mael's ending. I would have grabbed that brush and I would not have let go. Because at 14, you don't know yet that grief doesn't live in the past. You think if you can just hold the shape of someone long enough, they won't really be gone. At 30 years old, I know better. Not comfortably, not without scars, but I know. The painted version is never the same as the real one. You can get close enough to trick yourself, but the gap between the reconstruction and the person is where grief actually lives. And painting over it doesn't close it. It just hides the floor you're about to fall through. Verso's ending is not the good ending. There is no good ending here. There is only the honest one. The one that looks at the wound directly and says, we can't fix this, but we can stop making it worse. And then we continue. For those who come after. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so before I end this video, I just want to say that this is an amazing game. This is a masterpiece. I'm very glad that it won Game of the Year edition. And the game is so good that I made the video explaining why I chose this ending. And I think I've laid out everything I believe about this ending. I've been as honest as I know how to be about the game, about Verso, about Mael, about my own losses, about why I made the choice I made. But I would like to ask you guys, I'm not trying to convince you that the ones that chose Mael's ending, that you were wrong. If you chose Mael's ending, I genuinely, honestly understand it. Some of the reasons people gave for that choice moved me. The one about Mael's disability, the one about the painted people deserving to live, the one from the guy who lost his brother and saw his whole family in that story. Those aren't stupid reasons, those are human reasons. But what I want, what I'm generally asking for in the comments, in the DMs, or whatever, is not to be proven wrong. I want to understand. If you chose Mael's ending, tell me why, please. Not to debate, not to score points, but because this game is so layered, so honest about grief and loss and the way and the ways people destroy themselves trying to hold on, that I think the conversation it's starting is worth having properly. What does Mael's ending say that Verso's doesn't? What did you feel when you made that choice? What does this masterpiece of a game mean to you? So guys, please, you guys can drop in the comments. I will read every single one of them and I will try to reply to every single one of them. Because that's what this game, what a game like this deserves. Conversation. This was an amazing game. This was genuinely an amazing game. And I am looking forward to make a new playthrough. I've been playing the game off stream, finishing up my first playthrough. And I'm willing to stream this game one more time because this game you have to play it twice to be able to understand fully the story behind it. It's an amazing game and I genuinely recommend this game to everyone. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching my video. Never forget, my name is Chupumballs. Therapy costs too much, so I play games instead.